So I'm here in my brother's room. I wanted to talk to him a little bit about what I'm going to do for today's video. As you guys know, I love Disney, and due to the coronavirus right now, I can't go. So I thought it was a great idea for me to go ahead and start making Disney food, so that way I can get more in touch with my Disney roots. Let me talk a little bit about it. First, the first thing I'm going to make is sourdough bread. In order to do that, I need to make a sourdough starter. So if you guys have ever been to Disneyland, there's something called the Boudin tour. They give you a free piece of bread, and then they also go through the tour of how to make the sourdough bread. So we're gonna have to do that. That takes about 7 days. So we're gonna have to go ahead and go to the starting. Let's go ahead and go to my kitchen. So for a lot of bread, you need yeast in order for the bread to rise. For sourdough, you make the yeast by fermenting the flour and the water together, so that way it creates that yeast using the bacteria in the air, and then you do that over the course of 7 days, and then you use that dough in order to use that as yeast for the sourdough. And the great thing about doing sourdough and making the yeast, we call it the mother dough. It's that you can actually keep that for a very long time, and a lot of families have it. Passed down through generations, because all you have to do is take a little bit, add more flour and water, and then you can make bread with it, and then keep the rest, and you continue. And the bacteria just keeps growing and then creating its own yeast. So I'm gonna have to do this over the course of 7 days. So today is day 1. We're gonna do 1/4 of flour, 1/4 of water, and we'll mix that together. I have here a jar, a spaghetti jar that we cleaned, and then I'm just gonna put it in here. I'm not gonna put it in the fridge. I'm gonna loosely cap it and then have it ferment over the course of 7 days, and then you just add a little bit more until it's done, and then I can continue adding more and keeping it forever, or just using the whole thing. A lot of people feel like they don't want to wait, but for sourdough you need to do that, so that way it can properly ferment. So we'll do that now. We're gonna go ahead and mix it well, and then when we're done, it kind of looks like this. Make sure when you do it, you're doing unbleached flour. If you do bleached flour, it actually kind of messes up the fermentation a little bit. So make sure it's either wheat flour or unbleached white flour. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and put this in the bowl. And then we'll go ahead and keep this cap for at least 12 hours, but we'll come back tomorrow and then add more and see how it's going. So here we are in day 2. This is what my stuff kind of looks like. It's kind of smells weird, which is fine. And then we're gonna go ahead and add another 1/4 of flour and 1/4 of water. Oops. Well, that's fine. I'll just clean that up. And then 1/4 of water. Okay, so it's been about a week. Let's check the starter dough. It's a little bit more liquidy than I would like, but it's because of the weather. It's kind of hot here, and that's normal. We'll mix it up, but you can smell that it's really vinegary and it's bubbly in there. All right, let's give it a shot. We'll go ahead and start making it. Okay, so this part got a little messed up. There was a clip where I actually showed how I was measuring the flour and the water, and then also a little bit of salt to make the sourdough mixture. But unfortunately, that one got corrupted, and the reason I believe is just because at one point the recipe that I was using called for 2 loaves of bread. I did not need 2 loaves of bread, so I cut that recipe in half. And what was cool about that clip is you can actually see me make a mistake, and I realize it halfway. I laugh at the camera, I dump it, and I start over because I have enough yeast in order to make it. But unfortunately, that got messed up here. So the part that you're seeing now is just the part where I already fixed what I needed to fix. And then I'm adding the yeast, and then I'm mixing it up to make that dough. So I have that in real time instead of fast forward, just because I put a lot of work into this, and it kind of sucks that that clip is corrupted. I'll try to retrieve it eventually, but for now, just pretend like I mixed the flour together, and you saw all of that. And then here you can see I mixed it in a mixing bowl, and then I'm about to, yes, what do you need? Shh. Sorry, that was Ellery. And then I pour it onto the a flat sheet so that way that is coated in flour, so that way I can start mixing it together. All right, so here you can see I poured the mixture in here. I fast forwarded just because it does take a long time. It's very, very sticky. You know, even though I coated it with a layer of flour in order to help, it's just, that's the way it is. A lot of recipes will say just add flour so it's less sticky. And of course that mixture will absorb the flour, but we really want to keep mixing it so that way the gluten absorbs. Not gluten, I'm sorry. So that way you can really feel the elasticity in the dough, and so that way the gluten is activated through the flour. So that's why you can see me just mixing it over and over. It takes a long time. I even start mixing it up with my hands a little bit, like kind of like playing with it, just because I am childish and I thought it was fun. At one point it gets like super sicky, and I give up at that point, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna mix it here on this plate. That's the reason why they recommend like a dough scraper for this reason. I didn't have a dough scraper, so that's the reason why I was just kind of mixing it with my hands. But you can tell in the video that it is getting a lot, you can tell the electricity is getting a lot better than in the beginning, and you need to do this for about 12 or 15 minutes, depending obviously. And the way you can tell whether or not it's ready is when the dough, when you lift it up in the air, and then the dough doesn't just immediately break. So that's how you know the electricity is fine. And the reason why I know this, even though I've never made sourdough bread before, is because I've made white bread before. So it's the same concept. The only difference is that with sourdough bread, you're using yeast that you made yourself, versus for regular white bread, you're using active yeast that you buy from the store. And right now, there's not a lot of yeast because of the, because of the quarantine stuff, and everyone is baking. So there's not a lot of supplies. So that's the reason why we're making sourdough bread. Plus, I really wanted it for the clam chowder. As you can see here, it's getting really sticky. I tried to take it off at my hands at one point, and that wasn't working. So I really regretted wearing rings. Really take off your rings if you're going to be able to do this. And see, as you can see here, I'm trying to get the rest off because I'm ready to go ahead and let that dough rise. Like I said before, I don't have a dough scraper, so I use the back of a knife. I do not recommend this. I'm smart enough that I could use the back of the knife, but it's still dangerous, and I could have made a mistake. But I was really slow. It looks fast because the video is sped up 400%, but I was actually being really, really slow with it. I'll probably have to figure out next time to have like a dough scraper. But as you can see, the electricity is really good. I was really happy with it, and we would have to make the dough rise for about 2 or 3 hours in order to get this done. I ended up going for a run just because I was like, well, I have nothing else to do. Put that aside so that way it can rise. Here you can see that I'm adding extra flour and water into the yeast mixture. It was bubbling, so that's really good. That's the fermentation and the bacteria. So that way I could make more sourdough if I wanted to. So that's good. And then I go ahead and clean up and wait for that to rise. Fuck.